Hey guys, and welcome to this episode of the Happy Knitting Podcast. My name is Julia. I'm coming to you from the UK, and today is Saturday, the 8th of July, 2023. I'm so glad you're joining me today to talk about some yarn, some knitting, and also some crochet. Usually this is a knitting podcast, mainly knitting. I still don't really call myself a crocheter, although I am definitely dabbling in crochet. But today is going to be a little bit different in that I will talk about my regular sort of knitting whips a little bit, but I'm also going to be talking about some of my ongoing crochet blankets because, spoiler alert, I did start a new blanket, as I think I hinted at last week. And I thought I should show you some of the crochet blankets that I have as works in progress at the moment. I'm not going to show you all of my works in progress, I think. We'll see what happens, but yeah, so I think we should start out with the knitting and then I move on to crochet. So if anyone is not interested in either of those things, you can just either skip ahead or turn off when I get to the crochet bits. Also, honestly, today has been, the entire week has been so intense and crazy, and I've had many toddler feelings this morning and I'm just exhausted. So if this is a little bit less planned, and I mean, you can tell I'm just sitting here in my dungarees, I'm a hot mess. We're just gonna go with it today. I'm not apologizing for it, but just a minor warning. Sometimes we are, I think, a bit more structured, but today I thought I'm just gonna record the episode anyways. It is quite warm here as well. We're waiting for a thunderstorm, so it's that really weird weather, which I think is just making everyone even more crazy. But yeah, here we are. I have coffee. I'm on my second coffee. I haven't had much sleep in the last few nights, if I'm being honest. So yeah, here we go. Should we talk about the cardigan first? Let's talk about my Rowan felted tweed cardigan, which I've talked about quite at length in the past, so I'm not going to go into massive amounts of detail, but essentially I am sort of freestyling a top-down steeked cardigan using this beautiful yarn, which is Rowan felted tweed. It's my first time working with this yarn. I actually was going to destash it, and I am so glad I didn't because it's beautiful, and I was going to destash it mainly because I didn't love the color. This is the colorway Duck Egg, which I think looks very different both on like Rowan's page and so on, as well as I tend to look at Ravelry project pages or like stash pages to determine colors before I buy them if I'm unsure. And this color looks very different in all of the photos I've seen of it. But yeah, so I wasn't sure, but I'm really glad I didn't destash it because I think it's going to be a beautiful garment, and I think I might understand why everyone loves Rowan felted tweed. Hang on, what's my hair doing there? Okay. So what I did is I used a top-down raglan sweater pattern that went with my gauge to start. So I used the no frills sweater just because that's what I wanted to do. I also have the no frills cardigan pattern in my library because I have knitted before, but that's a completely different construction and I didn't want that. So basically I knit a top-down raglan sweater, and besides the sort of cast on numbers and the short rows, I just did my own shaping, my own increases, everything. I did some decreases actually. I did some waist shaping on this one as well. And this is really hard to show you because last night I steeked it. So last night I cut open the steek. I secured it with, I don't actually do the crochet method. I use a knitting needle, but it's a very similar sort of idea. So you secure the stitches, and then what I have done is I have tacked them down on the inside, so they shouldn't go anywhere. And ironically, I did this in a really weird order. So I knit a bit of the body, then I knit both sleeves because I wasn't sure how much yarn I would need, but my sleeves are now on hold as well because I'm going to knit the cuffs to like the perfect length once I can try it on, which now I can do, but before, when I was knitting it as and the steek was not cut yet, it was essentially a sweater, and a sweater might fit slightly different than a cardigan would. So I haven't finished the sleeves yet, so they're both on hold. And then I was working on the bottom rib of the cardigan, but again, it was really hard to determine just the length that I wanted. So because the rib I don't steek, you just basically do the steek for the stockinette part, because the ribbing you're working back and forth anyway, so there's no real point putting a steeking panel in it. So last night I eventually secured the steek, cut it open, checked the fit, and then I finished the bottom hem last night. And then this is the reason why I got way too little sleep. I picked up the first button band. I do think I'm going to put buttons on this. I usually don't, because I hate like the fluffiness of buttons and buttonholes, and I don't really use them. But for this one, I mean, I've started with the left one, the left button band, because this one's going to have the buttons, so I don't need to worry about buttonholes yet. But I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to actually put some buttonholes and buttons on this one, because I have a beautiful collection of buttons from my husband's gran, and also from my own grandma actually. So it would be nice to use them. I'm just not a person who puts buttons on their cardigans. But yeah, I think for this one I'll do it. Even if I don't put buttons on, at least I have the options if I put the buttonholes in. So yeah, I am quite close to finishing this. I am hoping to finish this today. So I only have this button band to go, and then obviously the other side. And then my sleeves, they maybe need either a really long rib, or I think what I might do is I might do like 5 more, maybe even less, maybe 3 to 5 centimeters of stockinette, and then I do the rib, because I want these to be the perfect length. Because essentially I want to be living in this. I want this to be like the perfect staple cardigan that just, that fits really, really well. And I think so far I've achieved it. And the fabric that this yarn creates is just beautiful. It is so drapey. It's really, really lovely. So yeah, that was a very complicated explanation, but that is my Rowan felted tweed cardigan in the colorway Duck Egg. And I am in a bit of a tangle. I don't really know why. Let's figure this out. There we go. Next up, I did cast on another pair of socks because, oh yeah, I have a finished object. Very briefly, I finished these socks that I showed to you last week. Essentially, they were almost done. I think I just had to put in the heels. So these were my tube socks. Last week, they were exactly like this. They just didn't have a heel. So I've put in 2 afterthought heels and finished off this pair of socks, which will be for me. And this is Fab Funky Fibers in the colorway Never Ending Rainbow. And as you can tell, they are not matchy-matchy because I only used one 50-gram ball and I knit a massive tube like this. And then I cut them in half, which is way more economical, and also it's really fun. So I got a whole pair of long size 43 EU socks out of 50 grams of self-strapping yarn, plus of course the matching heels, cuffs and toes, which are Filcolana Aweta in the marzipan colorway, which I think is the most perfect, like beigey gray, and this will make a reappearance in a second. So anyways, these socks were done, so of course I had to cast on another pair of socks, which I have lost. So I wasn't really sure what to cast on next. I was in a bit of a knitting rut last weekend. I think I just wasn't in a great place mentally, and everything was a little bit annoying. And I tried to cast on with the yarn that I showed you last week, which was the, what was it? Cotton bamboo linen yarn, the Bambolino from Schachenmeier. And I hated it. It made my hands hurt immediately, and I tried with different needles, and then it felt really splitty, and I was just really grumpy that my new yarn that I had picked up to essentially immediately start knitting on it wasn't working. I'm gonna give it another shot. But yeah, I was really grumpy, and then I didn't know what to knit, and nothing was speaking to me. So in the end, I decided to grab some leftovers. So this is some leftover Schoppel Zauberball. This is their crazy Zauberball, which is the plied one. Their normal Zauberball is not plied, so this one has like the crazy barber poling effect. 99% sure this is colorway Garden Party, which I used last year for a pair of socks. And I paired it with some more Filcolana Aweta. No idea about the colorway, but I only have 50 grams of this, which was a bit of a weird choice. I don't know why I bought 50 grams of sock yarn, but This is very quickly becoming my favorite sort of go-to commercial sock yarn. It is not expensive, it's also not super cheap, but I really like it. And what I did is I wound my leftovers. I think I had 30 something grams of the Zauberball, so I have divided that into 2 balls, and I need to find the second one because otherwise I'll have a problem. It is not in my project bag, which is slightly worrying, but we'll figure it out. And what I am doing is I am once again knitting helical socks. And how fun are these? So if you're not familiar with the concept, helical knitting essentially is just knitting 1 row stripes, but because you always slip a couple of stitches before you switch colors, you don't get any sort of line where you switch the colors. You don't need to do any like jogless stripes. You don't need to do anything. They just, like there is no line anywhere. They just flow around, which is really, really cool. And also it's really fun. So I've done this before where I use my main color, in this case the Filcolana, for the cuff, and then I am just essentially knitting a tube, and as you can tell the Zauberball is changing colors. So then it makes for this really, really cool effect, which I think is not really coming across on camera as well as it is in person. But it's really, really fun. I am definitely enjoying it. And I was wondering if this color combination is kind of weird, but I think it works. And I mean, there's so many colors in this little ball of yarn. And the second one is going to be completely different as well. So these should be really fun sort of fraternal socks. They're never going to match, but I think you will always be able to tell that they are the same pair. And yeah, these are fun. Once again, I'm gonna just knit a tube either until I run out of this yarn, which I might, or until I think they're long enough, and then I will put in an afterthought heel in the burgundy as well. So that is my latest sock whip, and I really hope I find that second half of my Zauberball skein, otherwise I will have a problem. Yeah, so that has essentially been my knitting for this week. And otherwise I have been crocheting. So what have I been crocheting? Let's start with my newest blanket, which makes me really, really excited, because as you remember probably last week I showed you my finished prism blanket, which I enjoyed so much, and that was a knit blanket. And I then went, essentially I saw a blanket kit on a D-stash page on Ravelry maybe 3-4 weeks ago for a blanket by Black Sheep Wools. I think they sometimes sell crochet kits with the yarn and the pattern, and essentially it's a V-stitch crochet blanket, and I really liked it, but I couldn't bring myself to buy the yarn. I wasn't quick enough with the D-stash. I thought about it for a day, and then of course someone else bought it, and the kit was out of stock, and also I wasn't 100% sold on the colors, and I couldn't buy the kit anymore anyways, but even if I bought the D-stash one, it was for a pretty small, sort of more like baby blanket size. So in the end, I decided, since I was still thinking about the same blanket a couple of weeks later, I would order the same yarn, which is a yarn that I really, really like, and just make my own V-stitch blanket with my own color palette. And I think the one in the kit, I think it's called the Cherry Blossom blanket. I think that was like 8 or 10 skeins of yarn, and I ordered 18 because I want this to be a bit bigger. And of course I have lost all of my tags. Hang on, there's a million of them here. So this is the yarn that I am using. This is Scrappy's Stone Washed, which is a 78% cotton and 22% acrylic yarn. And you will know that I usually don't use acrylic, but to crochet with for blankets, this is one of my favorite yarns. I really, really like it. And as you will be able to tell, because I have another blanket project to show you with the same yarn. I use this yarn. They have this little sampler pack where you get, I think, 48 or 58 tiny 10-gram rainbow balls. It's quite popular, I think. And I used that to make my son a baby blanket when I was pregnant with him. And that's held up so well. I've actually now donated it to a children's hospital. But yeah, so I've used this yarn before. I really like it, and I really enjoy working with it as well. So I got it in like 100 million different colors, which I basically, I mean, you know me, I went for like a pink, red, orange, yellow sort of color palette, and then I decided to mix it up, which I'm not sure, maybe I should have just stuck to my guts, but I also got these sort of like minty tones and a bit of a, like a cooler pink, and I've got a couple of different beiges, and I've got this bright lemon yellow. It's not even lemon, it's more like lime. Yeah, so I've bought a million colors. These are all the 50-gram balls, and luckily cotton isn't that expensive. And look, I have started my blanket. Oh my god, I'm so excited about this. Obviously it's been squashed into a bag, so it's a little bit crinkly. But look at how much progress I've made since I've started this on Monday. Today is Saturday. I love it. I love it so much. I am so excited about this. So what am I doing? Essentially, this is just the V-stitch. It's a crochet V-stitch, which is very, very simple. There's a million tutorials on YouTube and anywhere if you type it into Google, which is what I did. So I haven't used this stitch before. I just thought it looked really nice on the cherry blossom blanket, and I tried to look if I can find that pattern, but I couldn't really find it anywhere. So I've just decided to, I mean, it didn't seem very complicated, so I'm just making it up as I go. So I think I started with 203 stitches, something like that. I think it was a multiple of 3 plus 1, whatever that number is. And because I am lazy, I didn't do like a chain and then did the stitch in it. I did a single crochet foundation. What do you call it? Is it a foundation chain? Foundation stitch? The thing where you don't have like this really annoying tiny little like squirrely little chain, but you basically make the first row of stitches as you start your blanket. So it does have, I think it's called foundation chain, so you can tell there's a little bit of a different thing here, but I think it looks fine. And yeah, I'm just doing 1 row V-stitch stripes, and as you can tell, I'm crocheting my ends in as I go. So once I'm done, I just need to snip these off. So there's no weaving any ends in at the end of this blanket, which is good because there's a million stripes in this. And yeah, I mean, how fun are the colors? I think this is so bright and cheerful. Every now and then I question if I should have just gone with more like my usual color palette, but I did want to do something different, and the kit that I saw also was quite out there in terms of, I think it was like a lime green and pinks and purple sort of thing. So I think mine is a little bit similar, but I've also added some yellows, and yeah, I've just mixed it up a little bit, but I did look at the color scheme that they had before I went to pick my own colors. So yeah, I've made so much progress on this. I'm using a 4mm hook. I think these are the Knit Picks ones. The Knit Picks, Knit Pro, they're really cheap, but they're actually my favorite. I've tried a couple of different ones. But I think these ones and the red clover ones are my favorite. Which is good because I tend to lose crochet hooks, and these ones are really, really affordable. I think I have like 3 or 4 of these in size 4, which is what I use all the time. And yeah, this stitch is really fast as well. Like, it reminds me of granny stripes in the way that you work it up, but I feel like it's even quicker, and it's really, really drapey. Like, I think in terms of the fabric, sometimes I don't like crochet fabric because it can be quite stiff. Like, it just has a very different handle, and obviously my background is in knitting and not crocheting, so I will always sort of want a more sort of drapey fabric, I think. But this is really, really drapey, and I don't know, maybe it's also just a perfect combination of needle size and yarn and stitch pattern, but I love this so much. And also, I always feel like I'm a very slow crocheter, but I think I've picked up my speed with this. I've been working on this a lot while watching Tour de France. Usually at night I'm rewatching it because I can't watch it during the day. And I feel like it's really, really good progress. Whereas usually with crochet, I feel like I'm just sitting there and 1 row takes me forever. So maybe I'm getting some good crochet practice in, which would be nice. Yeah, I could just talk about this for like another 10 years, I think. I'm already thinking I might need another one. I'm just really loving it. And I mean, imagine all the color options you could do. I mean, I thought about gradiating the colors like managing them more, which I think would have also been beautiful. But I also wanted this to be a quick on-the-go project, and if I then have to always check which one of my 18 colors do I have to use next, I think it'll be a bit more tedious. Actually, I'm lying. I think I ordered 18 colors, but 3 of them I've chosen not to use. These sort of oranges and this like really like yellow, I don't think I'm gonna put those in. I think, yeah, they just didn't really go with my color palette. And a couple of times I have started a row and then decided I didn't like the color scheme and I ripped it back and used a different color. But now I'm trying to just power through and not overthink the colors too much. So yeah, that is my V-stitch blanket. I'm not sure if I'm going to put a border on it. The cherry blossom blanket that I saw first definitely has a border. It looked very simple. But I also really like it as it is, so maybe I'll just do it like that. I'm not sure. But I definitely foresee more V-stitch in my future because I think it's absolutely beautiful and I think you could do so many things. Like in terms of color, in terms of scrappy blankets, I think this would make a great sort of sock yarn scrap blanket as well. So yeah, let me know if you're also into like a V-stitch or if anyone wants to crochet along with me. That would be really, really fun. Yeah, talking about Scrappy's Stonewashed, I thought I'd show you my other blanket that I have in the same yarn, and maybe this will give me some motivation to work on it again. So for this blanket I'm using the same yarn, except I am using a different, this may be the same beige that I have in my other blanket as well. But for this blanket, and excuse the mess, this is the Battenberg blanket. And this one you can tell I am definitely managing colors. So there's the Battenberg blanket and there's the, what's the other one called? There are 2 blankets that are basically the same thing. But the Battenberg has sort of free tutorials on YouTube, and I'm very much, when it comes to crochet, I can't really read patterns very well, and I get very confused with like the US and UK terminology. So whereas with knitting, I don't watch YouTube tutorials, I just follow written patterns. For crochet, I love it when there's just a video that I can watch. So I think the Battenberg blanket has the videos on YouTube that explain it really, really well. And that is what I'm doing. So you can tell you make these tiny little, they're not tiny. You make these little squares and then you join them together. And obviously I am using this sort of beigey gray, which, does it have a colorway? Of course not. Axonite, colorway 831, as sort of my main or background color. And then I'm using these different shades of blue, turquoise, brown, and yellow. And I haven't worked on this in a year. And this one feels more like your typical crochet blanket. Like, it's nice, but it's definitely more firm and less drapey. So I remember actually last year on holiday, I just took my contrast colors with me and I crocheted all these little squares, and then at home I started joining them together, and I think I have some random little squares still flying around. I found some when we were moving. I found some of these squares tucked away, but I don't really know where they've gone now. But this is the idea. So you make these little squares and then you join them together. Will this ever grow up to be a big blanket? I don't know. Like, it's just a bit fiddly, and that's the thing. Like, with these sort of blankets, I then forget how exactly to do them, and then every time I sit down I need to look it up again, or I would have to, continually work on it. But this is not something I want to continually be working on. So not sure, but I think I do want to keep it, and maybe one day I'll finish it. I do really like it. Maybe I can make something small. I don't know about the toddler ones. Maybe one day he'll want like a doll's blanket or whatever. We'll find a use for this, and I do quite like it. I like the look of it. I just don't enjoy the process as much. Like, it just doesn't flow. And I have it in my beautiful La Bien-Aimée bag, which I got at their store in 2018? I think 2018. Was it 2019, just before we got married? I have no idea anymore. It was a long time ago. It was pre-child and pre-pandemic. That's all I can tell you. Alright, and then the last blanket that I thought I would show you today is this one. And I'm not sure if I showed you this before or not, but this is a woolen crochet blanket, because I know crocheters tend to use cotton or acrylic, but I'm like, actually you could also use wool, especially if you're happy to wash it. And this one I am excited about, and this one I think I only started it in the beginning of the year, so this is not a very new blanket. Once again, using my trusty Knit Picks Knit Pro orange crochet hook, size 4mm. And this is just a giant granny square, and again I am crocheting the ends in as I go, so they're still on there, but they don't need to be woven in anymore. They just sort of hang on until I snip them off. And this one I really like. I think this one is a bit, I mean, it is bright, but it's less sort of in your face bright than my other one, which I do also really like. And what I'm doing is I am just crocheting a giant granny square. So I started in the middle with the pink, and now I'm just going out. And the only really thing you need to pay attention to is to turn your blanket every now and then, because otherwise the blanket will start skewing a little bit. So I found a really good, I just worked out my own technique of turning it and switching colors and everything every round, so ends are woven in, the join is relatively invisible. I mean, you can maybe tell, but not really. No, you can't really see where I change colors. And yeah, so this one, honestly, it just needs some love. It just needs to be worked on. And now I'm at the point with this one where it does feel quite slow, because I mean, it's not huge, but one round is quite long. And for this one, in terms of yarn and colors, this is Filcolana, and I may not have oh yeah, I do. There's one with a ball band. This is Filcolana Pernia. So this is 100% wool, non-superwash. I'm happy to wash this. This is not gonna be like a duvet, toddler blanket or anything like that. It's just gonna be a blanket that we have downstairs on the couch. 175 meters per 50 grams, which I think makes it a sport weight. Yeah. And what I'm doing, essentially, I have 3 sort of neutral colors. So once again, marzipan. I love Ficolana, the marzipan colorway. It's just beautiful. Like, it's not beige, it's not gray, it's not white. It's just the perfect color. And then my medium sort of neutral is this brown, and then I have this dark brown. And what I'm doing is I'm always doing one row in this, one row of a color, one row in this, one row of a color, one row in this. So it's always one sort of neutral-ish color between the stripes. So it looks random, but there is some system here to my madness, and I think it keeps the colors a little bit separated, and I think I really like it. I really like the effect that it's giving me, and actually just showing you this blankets makes me want to work on them again, which is good. Maybe I should show you my other blankets one day, and maybe that'll get me more motivated to work on these as well. So yeah, those are the 3 sort of main crochet blankets I have on the go right now. Should I get my other ones? Let's get the other ones. Let's just talk about all of them. Alright, I've gotten all the blankets that I could find on a whim. This one is the saddest one. My friend Marion always makes, she always has made these beautiful log cabin squares, and her blankets are great. They're so good. And I think as I was literally about to give birth, I thought it would be a great idea to start another blanket, and how about one like this? And this is literally how much I did, and this is never going to turn into a blanket. In fact, I had, in our last house, we had this beautiful chest that now houses all of my project bags and knitting books, and I had this on top with the ends hanging off, and just put some plants on it. Like, this is never gonna turn into a blanket. It's beautiful. It's just sock yarn, and like, I like the feel of a garter stitch on small needles, but no, this is not really a blanket. It's never gonna be a blanket. I might like do the same idea with a different yarn, different color palette one day, but I found it a little bit fiddly. Like, my hope was to have something really easy to just pick up and go, but I found myself constantly like ripping out colors and like pre-planning which colors would go where and how they would all stack up and look together, and it wasn't working for me. So this is really a non-blanket, is it? Next up, and I don't really know, I haven't looked in these bags for a long time, but this is, oh, this is bigger than I imagined. I thought this was way smaller. Interesting. This is my zigzag blanket that I did for Advent 2020. I think that was the first time and the only time that I've ever had a sort of mini yarn advent calendar. So I tried to knit one mini skein into a crochet one mini skein into my blanket every day, and I think I mostly succeeded. So this is the Pixie Yarns advent calendar, which I love the colors. What was a little bit weird is because I basically crocheted them in the order that they came, and they started out like really like pastel-y, and then they changed. So I tried to use other yarns that I got from an advent swap as well, and like try to organize the colors, but it didn't really work out super great. But yeah, I had no idea I worked so much on this. Obviously at some point the advent yarn stopped, and I've just been using random leftover mini skeins, sock yarns that I had in stash and so on. And yeah, this is way bigger than I imagined. So maybe I should finish this. I didn't think I would ever finish it, but it is really pretty, isn't it? This is a pattern by Addict24. I don't remember what it's called. I'm really sorry. If it's in my project pages, I will try to link it. Otherwise, if you go look for Addict24's patterns, she has many, but you will find this one. And it's just this really pretty sort of zigzag crochet with increases and decreases. Obviously, I have no idea how I did it, but I remember it being quite easy. And again, this one I think makes a very nice fabric as well. I do really like it. I am so glad I brought all of these blankets out. To be fair, I have since used up most of my mini skeins because if you remember, I made this massive garter blanket in the beginning of the year, mild garter blanket in the beginning of the year, and I used 820 grams of mini skeins. And I've also destashed some mini skeins. I've donated some like leftovers. So I don't have very much yarn to work these scrappy projects with, but I do think it will build up again over time, because you always have more leftovers, don't you? So yeah, that is that blanket. And then we're gonna look in this bag. I don't really know what's in here. There are needles in here. That's interesting. These look higher sharps. Interesting. This is my northeasterly blanket. This was all the rage so many years ago. Maybe some of you remember this. This is never gonna get finished, let's be honest. I don't know what to do with this because I can't donate it. I also don't wanna, I don't really wanna unravel it because I don't know. I don't know what to do with this, honestly. It's cool. I like the concept, but it's not me. It's not what I like today. I also didn't really enjoy the process because, again, it's a little bit fiddly. Like, I developed this technique of joins that I really liked, which are linked in my Ravelry page if you are interested. I think somehow this project has quite a lot of views because I was one of the first people, I think, who started this blanket, and I am doing the joining differently to the pattern. But yeah, no, it's not really my thing. And then in a similar vein, I'm sure you guys will remember these. This is the mitered square blanket that everyone was knitting back when I started getting into knitting podcasts, so maybe 7, 8, 9 years ago. I have a finished one of these, and this is my second mitered square blanket, if not my third. Again, I think they have been destashed or donated. I don't have these in my house anymore. These were all the rage, but honestly, today, the look of it is too busy for me. I think these ones are fun to knit. They are really, really fun, and I would actually enjoy making more of these squares, but I don't know. Maybe it's age, maybe it's like tastes just change. If I were to make another like mitered square blanket, like today, I think I enjoy more like picking a color palette and sticking with it rather than just using like random scraps like this. And I think there are ways to make scraps look really, really fabulous. Like that striped blanket, I think the zigzag one looked really good. I think you could do a beautiful sort of V-stitch or granny stripe or something with these busy yarns. This is not really the way I would do it today. So yeah, that's another blanket that's going to blanket heaven, I think. And then what do we have in here? Oh yeah, so this was a whole another chaos. I originally bought this yarn from Scrappy called Tribe, I think. Excuse me. All this yarn is really dusty. This is really old yarn. It's making me sneeze. And I bought it to make Battenberg blanket. So this is before I started the one that I showed you earlier. And as you can tell, this is sock yarn. These squares are really, really fine. And I did an extra row on each of the squares and still they are tiny. So I made all these Battenberg squares for this one. And I started joining them together. So this is what they look like when you join them. And it is pretty. But this was way, way too fiddly and faffy. And I knew I was never going to get a blanket out of this. Which is why I abandoned this and chose to make basically the bigger version with the Scrappy. Oh my goodness, you guys, this last bag has just made me sniff up, and like I already had hay fever, and somehow this last bag of yarn has just completely set me off. So I've literally just been like streaming and sneezing for a good 5 minutes, so we're gonna wrap this up. Anyways, what I was trying to say, I reused the Scrappy Tribe yarn held double to make a granny square baby blanket, which has also been donated, so unfortunately I cannot show that to you. But yeah, I just decided that was never going to work out, so I repurposed the yarn for something else, except I think I have one pink ball, like this one like random ball of singles sock yarn, which is a weird thing to produce in the first place, lying around somewhere in stash. But otherwise, yeah, that Battenberg blanket was never going to work. So while the idea was good, and maybe I could have done it with the yarn held double, I actually tried that, but I didn't enjoy holding the yarn double when crocheting with it. So yeah, that one has gone. But I've used the yarn, so I'm happy. That wasn't a complete fail. So yeah, I think that is it for the yarn and crochet blankets. As you can tell, I am kind of, my face, I feel like it's just swollen up. So I think I'm gonna let you guys go. But I hope that this somewhat rambly and chaotic story about crochet blankets was still interesting to you. It was definitely good for me to bring them all out, I think, and I am more motivated to work on them again. And also, I just love blankets. So let me know if you also love to knit or crochet blankets and what your favorite patterns and recipes for blankets are. If you're more a knitter or crocheter when it comes to blankets, I love blankets. I love a good blanket. My house is full of blankets, but we do actually use them a lot, so I think it is totally worth it, and it's just such a satisfying thing to make. So sorry about the weird sort of hay fevery ending, but thank you so much for joining in today. I'm gonna sit back and enjoy some coffee and probably watch way too much F1 and Tour de France over the weekend. I hope whatever you're up to, you have some yarn to play with, you're happy, you're healthy, and you're safe. And I will see you very, very soon. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!